Hey y'all, welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is Taya and this is Taya's Turning Pages. So by the title of today's video, you can tell that this is going to be a little bit different than the other videos that I have on my channel, and that's because this is going to be a recommendations video. Woo! I haven't done a recommendations video in so long. I want to say the last one that I filmed was probably 5 or 6, maybe 7 months ago. I don't really have that good of an excuse as to why I don't have a lot of recommendation videos on my channel. I want to make more. I think it's just because I just think that I need to have like at least like 5 or 6 or 7 books in a Recs video in order to actually give Recs, but that's not true. Even if it's just 3 books or 4 books, they're still Recs. So I'm going to try to keep that in mind, and moving forward I am going to try to incorporate more of these videos on my channel. A lot of these books that I want to recommend to y'all are not only my favorite books or some of my favorite books, but also just like good books in general that I feel like you should read and that I feel like not too many people talk about. Now obviously some of these books in this pile people have talked about extensively, especially on Book Talk, but some of these books I feel like people don't talk about enough. So that's where I come in. Definitely make sure you subscribe and turn on those post notifications so that way you'll be notified when I upload more recommendations videos in the future. I'm hoping to obviously film some thriller Recs as well as horror Recs as well as more like just romance trope Recs, etc. So that will be coming hopefully in the new year. But for now, we're going to start out with a recommendations video that speaks to one of my favorite tropes when it comes to romances. And it is the second chance romance trope. I don't know what it is about the second chance romance trope, but y'all, I love it. Every single time there's a story that has that, I will pick it up and I will read it because it is just so good. It's so good and it hits the spot every single time. It's just something about two people that were interested in one another in the past, they couldn't work out, meet up again years later and fall back in love, for them seeing each other again ignites that spark. I just feel like it plays into that whole like soulmates and twin flame idea that a lot of us hopeless romantics believe in, and that's probably the reason why I love it so much. So I wanted to shine a spotlight on some of these books as well as this trope in general, because there might be other second chance romance lovers that follow me and that watch my videos and are interested in reading more books with that trope. So definitely make sure you stay until the end because I feel like this is a good pile of books that I have over here. Okay, so this is going to go in no particular order. I'm just going to pick up the first book that I see, and the first book that I picked up is Through the Storm by Beverly Jenkins. So of course you guys know I was going to have to talk about my queen, my auntie, Beverly Jenkins. Okay, y'all know if you've been following me for a while how much I love this author and how much I love their books and the care and time and energy and love that is spent into crafting one of these books. I actually entered my historical romance reading era last year and I have not looked back since, but I only read Beverly Jenkins just because she's the only author that I'm interested in at the moment when it comes to this genre. Sorry not sorry, I just love her books and I just love how diverse they are and how all of these focus on Black love. So yes, definitely recommend picking up Beverly Jenkins if you haven't already. But this story actually follows 2 characters, one named Sable and one named Raymond. And so starting with Sable, Sable is actually a runaway enslaved person, and so she ends up fleeing her plantation one night and she actually comes across this camp where a lot of former enslaved people would go to in order to seek refuge until they could figure out their next step in their journey towards freedom. And so Sable ends up at one of these camps, and that is where she meets her love interest, Raymond. Raymond is actually a part of the military. I'm not sure what his standing is. I know he's like very high up in the military, so think lieutenant, think general, something like that. He is very high up in the military, and so him and Sable meet at this camp, and from the start, Raymond is smitten by Sable and he is really attracted to her, and he keeps finding little ways to run into her and talk to her while they're at this camp. But Sable is really just trying to keep her head down and she's just trying to focus on how she's going to really like finish this journey so that way she could reach freedom. But she does give in to Raymond and indulges a little bit and flirts with him sometimes. But as the story progresses, her and Raymond really do end up falling for each other and falling pretty fast and pretty hard until one day the camp is actually under attack. And so in the midst of all of this chaos, Sable and Raymond end up getting separated, and Sable actually ends up leaving the camp and leaving Raymond without saying goodbye and without really explaining to him why she had to leave the way that she left, because there is something else going on, not just the fact that the camp is being attacked. There's also some other reason as to why Sable leaves in a hurry. And so because of Sable's disappearance, Raymond feels betrayed. He feels like love does not exist and he wants nothing to do with love or the idea of love moving forward, because Sable was the only woman that he truly did love and he felt like she betrayed him. And so you fast forward a little bit, Sable Sable and Raymond have not spoken to each other nor seen each other since that night, until Sable actually ends up in New Orleans where Raymond and his family live, and Sable runs into Raymond's mother. But unbeknownst to Sable, Raymond's mother actually meets Sable, gets to talking to her, and realizes that she actually really does like Sable, and Sable tells her that she's really down on her luck, she doesn't have any money, and she doesn't know what she's going to do in order to survive. So Raymond's mother tells Sable that if she is willing to marry his son, then she'll be taken care of and she won't have to worry about money ever again. So because Raymond is sworn off of love and he doesn't care about, you know, marrying for love, he doesn't mind that his mother is going to set him up with someone. Sable decides to agree, and Raymond is obviously not happy about this, but Sable is happy about this because now she can finally explain why she had to leave him that night, and the story takes off from there. So as you can hear by that lengthy synopsis, there is a lot going on, but you can definitely pick out the second chance trope very easily. I just really love this story. It was a beautiful example of a second chance romance because these two went through a lot, okay? They went through so much turmoil and so much heartache and loss throughout the entire story that when they did get together in the end, it just made it even sweeter, and it just made you as a reader feel like it was worth it. Everything that they went through individually and collectively led up to this moment, and it just paid off for them, you know? So yeah, I just really love this story. I can't recommend this one enough. This is definitely my second favorite Beverly Jenkins novel, right after Something Like Love. I have never felt as connected to two characters than Sable and Raymond. If you are a character-driven reader, then I also recommend picking up this book for that alone, because you will get invested and care about these two so much. Because there is that time apart, I just felt like that time apart really allowed them to grow into themselves, but also grow into each other, respectful and healthy relationship with one another. Because remember, at the core of this is betrayal, at least in Raymond's eyes. So the fact that they were able to overcome it, it just made this reading experience even more worth it. So yes, definitely recommend picking up this book because it is so good. I will say that this is difficult to read at times because there are talks and mentions of slavery, as well as post-Civil War era and the Reconstruction era, and just how Black folks were displaced during this time, and were also met with a lot of violence from the Klan, as well as just white mobs in general. So this is a really difficult story to get through at times, but I still think that the romance overall was beautiful, captivating, and so compelling. The next book that I have here is truly one of my favorites. I think all of these books are my favorites, or have been my favorites at some point, but this one is truly one of my favorites. I will never stop talking about this book and this author in this series, but it is A Lot Like Adios by Alexis Daria. So this is the second book in the Primas of Power series, with the first book being You Had Me at Hola by Alexis Daria, and there is supposed to be a third book. I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but there is going to be a third book in this series. And this is technically a companion series, so you don't have to read the first book, You Had Me at Hola, in order to read this book, and vice versa. But I still recommend reading that book because the characters in that book do appear in this one. This story follows Gabe and Michelle, and Gabe and Michelle have actually known each other since they were children. They were inseparable, like literal best friends when they were growing up. They lived in the same neighborhood and they were just always with each other, until one day Gabe got into a really heated argument with his parents right before graduation. And I think instead of sticking around for his graduation, Gabe actually just bought a one-way ticket to California, boarded that flight, and left without ever speaking to Michelle or his parents again. And so Michelle is completely devastated and left heartbroken over this friendship breakup, essentially, because she couldn't understand why Gabe didn't just like reach out to her to tell her that he was leaving, or at least call her when he landed in California. And so Michelle takes it upon herself to reach out to him to try to reconnect with him. He does not pick up any of Michelle's calls, nor does he answer any of her texts. And so Michelle, being the bad bitch that she was like, all right, well, I'm not gonna beg anybody to be in my life, so you know what, I reached out to you, you don't want to answer, that's fine, I'm moving on. And so Michelle moved on and started living her life, whereas Gabe also moved on and started living his own life. And so him and Michelle haven't spoken to each other nor seen each other in years, until one day Gabe, who is actually very successful and runs this gym franchise, speaks to one of his investors, and his investor tells him that he needs to open a location in New York City. And so Gabe is kind of against this at first because he really wants to keep this like franchise really like local and like familiar and like community based, but he obviously realizes that in order to be successful and to have this money that he has to do this. And so he decides to go along with it. In order to get the word out about this new opening of this gym, he has to find a marketing professional as well as a graphic designer. And then that's where Michelle comes in, because Michelle is actually both of those things. She used to work as a marketing professional and then she switched to graphic design, and Michelle runs her own business, so she's a freelancer. And so Gabe's partner actually discovers Michelle's information and portfolio and tells Gabe that he's going to reach reach out to Michelle to set up a meeting with her. And Gabe doesn't know that this is Michelle yet, but once this meeting takes place, Gabe and Michelle are obviously face to face with one another. And throughout the story, you're obviously with them on this journey of them trying to confront the past and also exploring if there is more than a friendship there. So by that summary, you can tell that this is not only a second chance romance, but it's also a friends to enemies to friends again, lovers situation. And I'm not really the biggest fan of friends to lovers. I have never been like really interested in that trope. I just find it very boring and I need more angst in my romance. I'm sorry, I just need more of that. Because Gabe and Michelle had that falling out, they were technically kind of like just not on good terms, obviously, and so there was that little bit of angst and that little bit of tension woven throughout the relationship. So this made a great story for me. I became obsessed with this story when I first read it, and honestly, I love You Had Me at Ola. Like, I love that story, but I truly love this one a little bit more than that book, just because there's so much depth and so much substance added to this story. But also Gabe and Michelle's characters, really got to know what made them tick and also how they became friends in the first place. You could just really feel the love that they had for one another, even though they weren't on good terms during some parts of the story, and even though they obviously ended up falling in love with one another towards the end of the story, you could really feel their authentic friendship and their bond from chapter 1 all the way into the end. And I just love when books explore family and friendship dynamics. This book really delivered on the friendship dynamic part, especially because there are chapters in here that include fan fiction stories that Gabe and Michelle used to co-write together when they were kids. And it was just so cute to be able to see how their friendship and how their relationship mirrored their fan fiction story. You could tell that they were, in a way, writing to each other when writing these stories. And so I just really love those little tidbits. I know a lot of people did not like the fan fiction chapters, but I did. It gave more of a glimpse and more insight into their friendship and their dynamic overall. And I also really love their characters individually. I thought Michelle, like I said earlier, Michelle was a bad bitch and she just did not take shit from anybody, and I loved how she was so like sure of herself, so confident, even though she had her moments of vulnerability, especially when it came to Gabe and their relationship and friendship. It was a very touchy subject for her, but she still was very confident and sure of herself and knew what she wanted out of life. And I just really liked her character, and I thought that she was such an inspiring female MC for a rom-com in particular. Then I also really liked Gabe's character too. You could definitely tell that he needed to work through his trauma though. Like, he needed to go to therapy real bad, like real bad. But I still really liked his character, and I definitely thought that him and Michelle's dynamic was just so good, and their banter was really witty and funny. And I also just really liked the way that he would talk about her and how he felt about her. You could tell that even though there was a lot of pain and hurt and even somewhat of a lack of trust between the two of them, just because of how Gabe left and didn't tell Michelle, you could still feel through the pages and through the chapters that he loved Michelle and he wanted nothing but the best for her, and he wanted her to be happy. And so I just can't recommend this book and this series enough. Alexis Daria is a phenomenal rom-com author in my opinion. I actually got approved for an arc for one of her newer stories called Take the Lead. That comes out next year, but I cannot wait to read that one. She's an autobi author for me, especially after I read and finished A Lot Like Adios. I knew that I was going to pick up any book that she had. So yes, definitely recommend picking this book up if you are truly interested in second chance romances, because this one, it delivers. It really delivers. This actually might be my second favorite romance book right after It Happened One Summer. And that says a lot, because y'all know nothing comes close to that book for me, but A Lot Like Adios does. And the second to last book that I have here is The Mistake by Elle Kennedy. So y'all, I have to talk about this book for a second because The Mistake gets a lot of hate or just gets ignored by the majority of off-campus fans. And I just don't understand why, because this book was so good. And honestly, still my favorite book out of the entire off-campus series to date. This one is my favorite thus far. Like, this is in the #1 spot, and I just don't understand why people don't love John, Logan, and Grace as much as I do. For those of you who do not know, the off-campus series is actually a hockey sports romance series, and so this series follows a group of hockey players. So in the first book, called The Deal, you follow Garrett, who is, I think, the captain of the hockey team at this college that they all attend called Briar University. So you follow Garrett, and then you follow John Logan, who is in this book, and then you follow Dean, who is in the third book, which is called The Score, and then you follow Tucker, and I think his first name is John, but he goes by Tucker. But anyways, you follow Tucker in The Goal. And so those are technically the 4 original books in the off-campus series. There is a new book called The Legacy that Elle Kennedy came out with not too long ago, and that's just a Where Are They now book. But the original 4 are, like I said, The Deal, The Mistake, The Score, and The Goal. And so The Mistake follows John Logan. John Logan is really to himself and pretty quiet. You don't really get a good sense of his character in the first book, The Deal, because it really does focus on Garrett, but I felt like we really did get a good sense of the other hockey players' personalities. But John Logan, he was really quiet. You didn't really get to know too much about him. He was really a mystery in my opinion until we got to this book. This book really solidified that, okay, it's the quiet ones. It's always the quiet ones that you have to watch out for, but not in a bad way. Like, it wasn't bad is what I'm trying to say. Like, you follow him in this story, and John Logan is really all about sports and his studies, until one day he ends up hooking up with this freshman named Grace, and him and Grace have a great time. But I can't remember what exactly happened, but him and Grace, I think, had some type of like misunderstanding or miscommunication. But either way, they end up falling out, and Grace wants nothing to do with him. John Logan tries his hardest to reach out to Grace to try to make amends with her, but Grace is not having it, okay? And so then you fast forward to next year, and Grace is now a sophomore, and she's more confident in herself and knows what she wants and knows what she doesn't want when it comes to guys. And so her and John Logan end up crossing paths again, and John Logan is now determined to win Grace back and to make amends with her. And the story takes off from there. Similar to the other books, you can tell that this is a second chance romance, obviously, and this is one of the best ones, truly is. I originally rated this a 4 out of 5 stars when I first read it, but I honestly think I'm going to bump this up to a 4.5 because I keep thinking about this story and I keep thinking about these two characters in particular. I felt like Elle Kennedy did such a great job with the writing in this one and really rounding out and fleshing out both John Logan and Grace. I felt like we got equal time with both of their characters individually, but also collectively. I felt like I was actually learning about John Logan and why he was the way that he was and what made him do things that he did. And I also felt like I was learning more about Grace and what made her do the things that she did. And I feel like sometimes with romances, you don't always get that. You really do get to learn more about one character over the other, and it's usually the female MC, which doesn't offend me or anything because I do like learning more about the female MC, but at the same time it was nice and refreshing to really learn more about John Logan and what was going on in his personal life and why all of the personal things he was going through really impacted his potential relationship with Grace and just other people in general. Even though this is a sports romance and it does follow hockey players, it really does do a great job at exploring hard, heavy hitting topics. There are themes of alcohol addiction in here, as well as just trying to reckon with the fact that you're about to become an adult, figuring out life and what you want to do after college. And so I just really enjoyed reading from both of their perspectives. This felt really relatable to me just because like these two are obviously going through the college experience, and it just brought me back to that time period. And a lot of the things that they talked about in here, like the little subtle things that Elle Kennedy threw in here, it just made my nostalgic heart happy. And even though I'm not finished The Goal yet, I still think that this is one of Elle Kennedy's better books in the series when it comes to the writing. I felt like the writing for The Deal was a little bit at times, and we're not even going to talk about The Score and just how much of a train wreck that book was. The Goal, we're off to a good start with The Goal. I actually do like how this story is going, but I just feel like the writing in here, superior. It felt like I was reading a totally different book in the entire series. Like, this feels like this could truly be a standalone, and that's why I only have a physical copy of this book from the off-campus series, because this is my favorite one, and I just think that it does the second chance romance so well. You truly are with both of these characters on this journey of them trying to discover themselves, but also trying to go back to that night that they had with one another, what went wrong, and if they can rekindle those feelings that they had and that came up during that night. And it was just so fun following these two throughout the story and seeing them fall in love all over again and get it right the second time. Right, y'all, we have one more book left, and the book that I am talking about is 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. So I feel like everybody already knows about this book or has read it or at least has it on their TBR, but I am going to plug it here because it is a great book, and I don't talk about 7 Days in June as much as I feel like I should on my channel, just because I really did enjoy this story and I just feel like it deserves the praise that it gets. So this story follows two writers, one named Eva and one named Shane, and so these two actually go way back because they met during their high school years, and when they met during their high school years they actually became inseparable. Definitely had a strong friendship and a strong bond, but you can also tell their friendship would have veered into more of a romantic relationship. So something happens one night where Eva and Shane are separated and they do not see each other nor speak to each other for years, until they both run into each other at this Black writers and authors and I think like literary conference or event. They obviously strike up a conversation with one another and they start to spend time together and really reckon with the past over 7 days in June, and the story takes off from there. So I feel like this one is a bit different than the other ones that I showed, because I feel like the other ones that I showed were mostly like rom-coms that had heavy hitting topics, but they were mostly rom-coms or just like contemporary romance romance with like historical romance mixed in. This one definitely skewed more towards the women's literary fiction vibe, in my opinion. Like, you definitely spend time focusing on the romance, but I feel like you spend a lot more time with both Eva and Shane and trying to unpack their trauma and unpack their past hardships and just all of the trials and tribulations that they went through that led them to these 7 days in June, essentially. And so this story is definitely heavy on the triggers, so definitely make sure you look them up, because there are themes in here when it comes to chronic illness, as well as unaliving yourself and self-harm and mental health issues. So definitely make sure you look those up. But I really enjoyed the story when I read it, and it was definitely a refreshing and interesting take on a romance. There was so much that both Eva and Shane had to go through individually, and like so much that they had to work on in order to even think about entering a relationship with the other person. Tia Williams allowed us to have time alone with both of these characters and really see where they were coming from, and I feel like it really helped us as the reader understand why these two weren't right for each other during the time that they were together, but why now, years later, it makes sense for them to embark on a relationship and see if this will work. So yeah, I definitely recommend picking this book up if you're interested in a second chance romance that just has a little bit more oomph to it. And also, this book is very Black, and I love that. I love that this book explores Black love, and also just does a great job at showing the spirit and the essence of the Black community and how it is when all of us come together, especially for events where we're supporting our own. I just really loved how Black this book was, and Tia Williams is a goated author and truly one of those authors that I am always looking forward to reading new books by her. I actually do need to pick up one of her newer books. I forget what it's called. Pop up a picture of it, but I do need to pick up that book at some point because the cover is beautiful, and when I looked at her Instagram post about this book, it sounds like it'll be right in my alley. So I am going to pick it up and give it a read, but I definitely recommend picking up 7 Days in June, because this is one of those second chance romances that just does something to you. It affects you in one way or another, whether you're a romance reader or not. I just feel like a lot of people really enjoy this book and can really find something in it that they can identify with. And I have seen non-romance readers read this book and have given it glowing reviews. So if they're reading it and giving it glowing reviews, then you guys know that this book is good, because they are the toughest critics. I said this already in one of my most recent videos, but non-romance readers are the toughest critics. So if they're saying that this book is good, it must be good. All right, y'all, and those are all of these second chance romance books that I wanted to recommend to you today. I probably will film a part 2 or a part 3 to this, because I'm always picking up new romance books, and there are obviously some romance books that are on my TBR cart as well as my bookshelves that are second chance romance that I don't even know about yet, just because I haven't read them yet. But I'm hoping to make another one of these videos, because this is truly one of my favorite tropes and I just eat it up every single time. I didn't realize how much I love this until I looked back on all of these books that I just showed you and was like, wow, it's something about the second chance romance that really gets your girl going. So I definitely plan on making more of these type of Recs videos when it comes to my favorite tropes, as well as my favorite thrillers and horror books and nonfiction, etc, etc. But I don't know when those will come out, but just know they will be coming. All right, well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Definitely make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me my channel out. Also, make sure you leave a comment down below to let me know if you have read any of these books and if you enjoyed them, if you didn't enjoy them, and what are some of your second chance romance Recs. I would really love to know. Lastly, please make sure you follow me on Bookstagram as well as Storygraph. I will leave all of that information linked down below, as well as at the end of the video, like I always do. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.